Welcome to the Sport Exchange with me, John Robbie. Hi guys, it's John Robbie here. Welcome to the Sport Exchange podcast where we meet celebrities and personalities from different sports. We hear their stories, the good, the bad and the ugly, and learn how they deal with the transition from playing to enjoying the rest of their lives. Each week I'll discuss my most recent article and we hope to have a lot of fun. Enjoy. A short while ago on the Sport Exchange podcast, we spoke to Rugby World Cup winner Joel Stransky. Today, we chat to a soccer player who was part of the famous 1996 AFCON victory for South Africa. What an incredible time it was. And it's fitting we record it on the day that Barcelona are in town. Welcome, Shaun Bartlett. Hi, Shaun.
Hi, Robbie. Thanks for having me on your show. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic to have you here. Barcelona, why are they so special? And I mean, forget the hype around them. As a former soccer player, when you look at a soccer team, what makes a side special? What do you look at as opposed to me as a fan?
Well, I think, you've got to entertain the fans. It's an art, it's playing soccer. So for me, but watching Barcelona, the way they play, the look at the players, the names they've got as well. And when they get in the field, it's like that no fear attitude. And I think not many teams around the world show that on the soccer pitch. And they've done it, over the last 2 decades and consistently. And I think that for me obviously sets them apart from the rest of the teams, not just in Spain, but even around the world.
Are you a Barca or a real guy?
Unfortunately, I'm a Real Madrid. I'm one of those guys always want to, try and support the not famous teams or people obviously generally go for the teams with the big names. But for me, I think Real Madrid have also done really well.
Fabulous stuff. And when I look at Barcelona, it all looks so simple, and yet they always seem to have a man free. Yeah. And I look at it and I say, why doesn't everybody do that? Can you explain? Is that a stupid question?
No, it's not. I think if I can put it probably in one sentence, the way Pep Guardiola did was a lot of the times people think Barcelona is about possession. It's not about possession, it's about position. Getting yourself in a position where the opponent will never be able to mark you. Like you say, it always looked like they're playing with an extra man. And I think that's what sets them apart from the rest of the teams in Spain, in Europe, and around the world, is they always know how to move and get a player in a position where the opposition will never be able to mark them.
Is that as simple as Liverpool used to say, give and go? You give and then you go into space to be available.
Pretty much, yeah. And in soccer terms, they say, the third man running. You never see the third man running because everybody's focused on defending and putting pressure on the ball. So that's what they do well. And you could see it even in the past season with Manchester City. Did exactly the same thing as to how they approach the game.
It sounds so
it does.
Brain-numbingly simple. Yeah. Why is everyone not doing it?
Some of the best coaches in the world, it is about simplifying football. A lot of the times you hear people say, but coaches just complicate things. It's not. Players need to carry out the instructions. That is the basic thing. If you look at Man City's first season compared to the second, totally different. The second season, they carried out the instructions the coach wanted and the way they're supposed to play. And when you simplify everything, players also sometimes will enjoy it a lot more because that's what you need to do. And if you can do the simple things more than 100%, then you're already a better player than the extraordinary one.
Think back to 1996. I mean, it seems such a long time. I remember meeting you actually at a training session there. I went along to cover it for the very first time. What do you feel when you think back to 1996?
To be honest, I still get goosebumps. Obviously, 1996 was a year for me that just, elevated myself as a player individually because of that victory that we had in the African Cup of Nations. I was, I think, the second youngest in the squad after Mark Fish. So for me, it was a great opportunity to be part of that squad. We were together for about 2 or 3 years. And when the tournament came, you'll believe it or not, we did not think of winning that tournament. We never had that self-belief that we could actually win it. Because if you look at the countries and you look at the teams and the players that actually played in that tournament, we weren't favorites. But as obviously the tournament progressed and the fans got behind us and the self-belief grew, I think we started feeling actually we can do something different here.
The first game, Cameroon. I mean, Cameroon after their performances at World Cup. I mean, everyone thought these are just supermen, and you put them away 3-0. What did that do for your confidence? What are your memories of that game? Well, I know you came on as a sub, I think, didn't you?
I think that's obviously when you start any tournament, you've got to start on a good foot. And getting a 3-0 victory against a superpower at the time in Africa gave us that belief that actually, in the next game, we just have to do the same. And like you've indicated, I think after that game, we pretty much realized if we can do this to Cameroon, it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the field. We can just, do the same things and we'll get the same result. So I think for us, growing as the tournament went on, we just became stronger and stronger. And by the time it got to Ghana in the semi-finals, where I got my opportunity, I think we had to believe that this tournament was ours and nobody else is going to take it.
Talk us through your goal against Ghana.
Well, I think the big question about that goal is Lucas Radebe still up to this day said it was a pass to me. It was more like a clearance. The ball came to him. He didn't look. He just hoofed the ball to the front. And I managed, obviously, at the time, still had hair, still had a bit of speed. So I managed to hold off my defender. And, as a striker, you've got to do the first thing that comes into your mind. And the first thing for me was hit the ball in the volley. A lot of times you want to try and run towards the goal, hit the ball in the volley. And for me, hitting the back of the net, I think from the excitement and the celebration, you could see that I was really ecstatic about that goal and obviously gave myself an opportunity of playing in the final.
Well, I was going to say, to go from a sort of almost last-minute substitute to being a starting player, that's a hell of an achievement.
Well, it's about grabbing an opportunity. And I think a lot of the times, even the current generation, they're always looking for something different, for something better, and forget about actually what's in front of them. And when you get an opportunity, you've got to grab it with both hands and make the best of it. And that's what I did. And my life and career just changed after that, those two games, to be honest, the semi-final and the final.
Were you aware at the time, were you so focused on just winning the tournament? Or did you think, I'm on show here? There's more to it than just the team. I've got to think of myself.
I think, primarily the first priority is the tournament. I never thought of actually leaving South Africa, to be honest. When I played that tournament, I was still with Cape Town Spurs. So for me, that was sort of the highlight of my career, playing professional. And then you get to play for your national team, which many players don't get to do. And then after that is just to ensure that the team benefits, which we did. And I think the deals that came after, there was a few, but the American one was a springboard, obviously going out and leaving the country and then finally getting to where I wanted to be. You've got to set yourself goals. I always wanted to play in England. That was one of my ultimate goals.
Who did you support as a kid?
Manchester United.
Oh, good man. I always knew I liked you, Shaun. Yeah.
I think it's, during those days, the most games we saw on TV here was Man U, Liverpool, Everton, Spurs. Yeah. Always making the FA Cup and seeing some of the first division games. But there's certain players like Brian Robson, for me, was just the best, in that position and the ultimate professional. A lot of people obviously talk what he did away from the field, but that didn't interest me as to what he did on the field. And I just, and not many people would know this also, because I was never a striker. I was always a midfielder growing up.
Really?
And then scoring all the goals, I get to national team and I became a striker. And that's why I sort of idolized and looked at people like Brian Robson.
Goal-scoring midfielder, because that's first prize.
Goal-scoring midfielder, but also sort of wearing his heart on his sleeve, because you always saw him play at 110%. Always give his best because he knew who he was playing for. And I think that for me was the best thing about it.
The spirit that was built up before we move on from 1996. I mean, Clive Barker reminded me of a rugby coach. In a way, the little dance around. And I remember going and watching one of your final training sessions, and it was fun. Yeah. He had everybody scoring goals, bringing back, and it was scoring goals and celebrating. And I remember thinking, this guy's enjoying it. And then, of course, you had Neil Tovey, very different, a much quieter guy as captain and so on. Tell us about the dynamic of leadership in that team.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes that's missing, I think if you look at the dynamics of a team, in order to get success, you need all kinds of characters. Like you've indicated, you had Neil Tovey, the captain, quiet one. You had Mark Williams, always thinks he's Frank Sinatra. Up to this day, he still thinks he can sing. Don't tell him that he cannot. And then you had Clive, who was the best motivator ever. And as far as man management were concerned, he just knew how to get the best out of a player.
Tell us more about that. Because that's a hell of a compliment given your career.
I think he understood, being a family man, what's important. Being a sports person, obviously you want to give your best all the time. But when we had time off, even myself, you would say, okay, we've got off for 2 days, fly to Cape Town, go see your family, go see your wife. And we were like, but we're in the middle of a tournament. That for him was important, because when you break away from the sport itself, you refresh, you rejuvenate a little bit, and then you come back with these new ideas, the new sort of, vigor that you want to go out and play your best. And Clive just always knew how to get the best out of it. And even like you've indicated, the training sessions, it was always fun, but you knew exactly what was needed in those training sessions, how to get the best out of you in order to get the results.
Would a South African, let's say Clive Barker had been offered a job in English football straight away, because of the success, would he, with that personality, have made it? Or was he too nice?
Probably a little bit too nice. The industry in England is cutthroat. If you don't get results in your first 3 or 4 games, pretty much your job is on the line. And then also you look at different aspects.
Look at Sam Allardyce now. He's just been fired from Everton. He rescued them, brought them to 8th, and he's been fired.
Yeah, well, those are the things, though, with managers sometimes. You can sign a 3-year contract, but only be there for 3 weeks. And it's happened so many times. The only consolation in England is they do have an association looking after you as far as your interests are concerned as managers. And sometimes that's the benefit of working in those industries.
Tell us about, you're a kid of the Cape Flats.
Yeah.
Now that immediately makes me think of gangs and drugs and social deprivation, etc. And I think you were brought up by your grandmum, isn't that correct? Your grandma. Your background, was it the stereotypical Cape Flats kid who could have gone one way but came good? Exactly
that. And obviously my mom was very young. She had me when she was 18, not married. And at that age, she needs to go work. And I ended up staying with my grandmother pretty much till I got married, until 24, 25. Growing up with my grandmother, 10 obviously uncles and aunts in a 3-bedroom house. So it was never easy. But again, I think the foundation that was set during my childhood, for me, that set me up for life.
And what about your dad?
Dad was non-existent. So, everything was always...
Do you know who he was? Have you ever met him?
Yeah, I've met him a few times. Obviously, when I became pro, it was slightly different. Suddenly, the dad came out of the closet and a few things, obviously, you wanted. But, I was just going to say, as far as that perception of coming from an area with no father, no money, and then when you make it to a professional career and you go that same route, people will say, yeah, but look where you came from. You don't have to go that route. Yeah. You do not. That perception of, because players come from, the Cape Flats, or they come from a location, or they come from some settlement, that they're going to end up. It's not, for me, it's never ever in my mind. It's because of what I had around me, the family I had around me, and obviously the sport was my outlet. I could have gone, like you said, I could have gone the drugs, I could have gone the gangsterism way.
Did friends of yours go that route?
Unfortunately, they did. And like I always say, I was never the best player in my junior team, not by a mile. But those best players, those are the routes they took. And unfortunately, they didn't get to the level I got to, because I stuck to my guns, where I literally said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do everything possible in order to get there. And my family supported me all the way. My grandmother, obviously, weren't a saint. She would come and watch my games on Saturday, even with a bottle of wine. But end of the day, they were there. They were there to support me. And I think that for me, obviously, took me a long way, but also showed me, if you get the proper support around you, you can succeed.
Do you think that upbringing, though, toughened you up? Because I think a lot of people don't realize, even in today's football, that you have to be tough. You have to know how to handle yourself, etc. Did that help in that respect?
It did, and probably more so mentally. Obviously, we spoke about this, and we don't have the mental strength to go and play in front of 80,000 people. They can break you very easily, especially when you're in a foreign country and you're playing one of the biggest teams in the world, and suddenly you find yourself standing at Old Trafford. And that's actually, for me, probably one of the best memories.
2 goals. You should have got a hat-trick that day.
No, not just the 2 goals. The fact that Quinton Fortune actually told the story. He came from Q-Town, which is also on the Cape Flats. And he told the story where we're playing at Old Trafford and he's standing on the one side. I didn't actually have a clue and no idea about this. He said, he's standing on one side, I'm on the other side, and he's thinking to himself, we're standing at the Theatre of Dreams, 2 boys from Cape Flats, and we're standing at the best pitch in the world, and he's playing for Man United. Where in the world can you write a story like that?
Yeah.
But again, it shows you, it doesn't matter. You never forget where you come from, but always remember where you want to go. And I think sometimes our kids, the current generation for me, tend to forget that, and more about following the paycheck or chasing a paycheck.
But it's almost a cliche, and you're involved with young kids, though. Is that true? Do kids get seduced by a little bit of praise early on, their first paychecks, etc., and they don't realize quite how hard it is to make it to the top?
Which is a shame, actually, because a lot of the times you can make examples of people that fell by the wayside, that had the best talent and never made it to the top, and yet these players don't take that advice on board. I constantly talk to my players. I give them examples and I make them aware. And the first thing when a player comes into my club, the first thing I say to them, I'm not here as your coach to make you a better player. I'm here to make you a better man, because that for me is ultimately more important. You're a human being first before you're a sports person. That's the first thing. A lot of people don't.
I mean, I love what I'm hearing as a dad and a former sports person, but you get a George Best, who, I forget the early days where George was very dedicated, but a guy who can win you things but is naughty as hell and goes missing, or a solid plodder. I mean, as a coach, surely you can't be consistent with what you've said.
No, I always am consistent. Certain things I don't compromise. My principles and values as far as coaching and what I want to do and impact people's lives, that will never be compromised. And I will say the right thing, or say the thing that will obviously make you feel really bad at the time, but afterwards you'll realize actually the coach might have something worthy, as far as...
A bit like a father. You've got to be a bit like a father, I suppose.
That's the funny thing, or even not just as a father, but my sort of career path was, when you get to high school, grade 10, 11, you're supposed to choose where you want to go. I wanted to be a teacher. And the funny thing was, my wife told me the other day, it's like, you do realize you're teaching. I'm like, what are you on about? You're a coach, but what are you teaching these boys besides obviously football, techniques and tactics? You impacting their lives for the longer term, not just on a daily basis and getting results. You are teaching them how to be better people. So I'm in the industry. Sometimes, you feel that you maybe didn't make it in the way where you wanted to go, but I'm definitely following my passion.
You talk about wanting to be a teacher. I mean, had you made plans to go that? What were you going to teach, for example?
Well, you always have physical education.
Yes,
There was this one teacher at high school that I was like, he's the best ever. I want to be like him one day. So I even applied at the college in Cape Town to go and study that. And for me, that's what I wanted to do. Just be a physical educator, and then obviously maybe teach one math or science, because I was quite good in math and accounting. And after high school, got a trial at Cape Town Spurs, and my path changed dramatically.
Tell us about the trial.
It was a funny thing because it came through actually one of the guys at a church, one of the older guys. He said, I'm working with this professional player, Manu Janssens, and he plays for Spurs. Let me speak to him and see if we can organize you a trial. I said, that's never going to happen. I'm playing amateur here. They're not just going to take somebody from nowhere. And then I went and for a couple of days. The coach loved me, and he said...
Was that Mish Tavre?
No, it was actually Sergio Dos Santos.
Right.
He was the first coach. And then he said, but we're going to send you to Vasco in Cape Town. Maybe be there for 3-4 months, improve a little bit, and then you come back. So within 3 months, I got a call up to go back to Cape Town Spurs, and pretty much from there, made it my main goal to be in that starting 18 and 11 and never give it up.
And when did you start to realize I can actually make it to the top? Realize your dream of playing in England? Was there a moment? Was there a goal? Was there a report? Was there a selection where you said, hang on a second, this is not just a short-term dream I'm having before I go back to teaching, whatever. This is the real thing.
Well, I think it's probably, I scored an unbelievable goal against Kaizer Chiefs, running from my own box into the other side and scoring a goal. And, after that game, there was a lot of talk about how I could possibly make it, as a professional. Because playing at Cape Town Spurs, we weren't all professional. We were semi-pro. Still had to work from 9 till 5, which I worked at the sponsor, Shoe City. And then after
selling shoes?
Yeah, not selling. I was in the warehouse.
Yeah,
I was packing boxes, obviously to have to be delivered at the shops.
Packing boxes and then frightening boxes in the evening.
Now my wife says, I'm the best person to have around, especially when we're moving. So I know exactly how to pack boxes, and that's what I did, from 9 to 5, and after that you go and train. But the minute I got that opportunity with the 1996 Nations Cup, and then moving to the States.
Why the States, though? Why the States? Because, I mean, we know the States now has got a but I suppose this was one of the numerous startups when they were going to get going with football. Tell us a little bit about how that happened.
I think it was two reasons for that. The person that came out actually were, South African himself, Ivan Gazidis, who's, I think is actually currently with Arsenal in the UK. And he wanted myself and Dr. Kamalo to come as two South Africans to obviously add a bit of value to the league that just started in 96. So it was fairly new. As a young kid, also a young professional, for me, I thought it was a great opportunity as a stepping stone as to where I wanted to end up. Exactly the same question you're asking me now. A lot of people ask, but why America? Soccer was not popular in America. It was not a sport that obviously would get a lot of support. So for me, it was a good opportunity to put my name out there, but also as a stepping stone as to getting to the UK.
What was it like?
It was interesting. Obviously,
that's a loaded term, interesting.
Interesting in a sense. Obviously, they make it in a way where the Americans would come to the game. And my wife would tell many stories where there were like 40,000 people in the stadium and 90% of them would not know what soccer was. They wouldn't know the offside rule. They don't know what's happening, but they're there. And that's the Americans are so good at selling things, to the people. And for me was even there was never a draw. They used to call this a shootout where you had to run from the center circle, one-on-one with the keeper. You had 5 seconds to score a goal. So it wasn't a penalty shootout. They made it more interesting for the crowd.
Like hockey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it makes it more interesting. So there's a lot of things that obviously I could probably term it Americanized as far as soccer. So the people would stay interested as well. But the stadiums are always full.
And Colorado, of course, such a beautiful place.
The Mile High Stadium. The first thing I got there was I was told, this is where John Elway plays his games. And I had no clue. Then you drive down in Denver, you drive and you see like 7 John Elway car dealers in one road. I'm like, what the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
And then you realize actually American football is massive in this state. We managed to get to obviously 1 or 2 games and basketball, but I think for me, Colorado was just an unbelievable place to live as well. And like I said, probably the best place coming out of South Africa to go to a country that speaks the same language for one. And then the food wasn't that much different either.
We're talking to Shaun Bartlett. And then moving to what? Metro Stars? What was that all about?
Unfortunately, after the first season, I had a coach called Bobby Houghton. And he's obviously very familiar with South Africa. And he left the club and then they brought in an American guy and never got to play. And the good thing there is you can keep the same contract and just move to a different town. And I called the league and said, it's not happening here. I need to move. So they made a deal where 4 players from New York, Metro Stars came to Colorado. I would move the other way. And I actually played for Carlos Alberto Pereira, the former Bafana coach. And that was an interesting time as well.
How did you do that?
We didn't have the best of seasons. I did fairly well. I started scoring more goals in New York than Colorado. And then I was just obviously the year before the 98 World Cup.
And let's jump now, coming back and then off to Zurich and then going to Charlton. At one stage, there was some funny business, wasn't there, in terms of transfers, etc. Tell us about that and tell us how money-wise you were, how street-wise were you about the ways of football? Because you're living the dream, you're playing as a professional footballer, but you've also got to start thinking of the future.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant even earlier with my family, having that support. You can be, so streetwise as far as certain things, but, the industry also can be cutthroat. And I moved to Zurich in 98 after the World Cup. Had an outstanding season, and then a club from Italy came in and offered them 4 or 5 times more.
And of course, you had a good World Cup as well, didn't you? Yeah.
The World Cup, subsequent to that, moved to Zurich. But the year I had in Zurich was more on sort of the European stage, being second goal scorer to Andrei Shevchenko from Ukraine. And then the Italian club comes in and offered 5 times more. And
which club was that?
Lecce.
Yeah, they were good at that time. They were a good side,
Yeah, very consistent. And I thought, this is going to be a good move. I'm all for it. And my sports lawyer at the time, he was busy negotiating everything and everything seems on par until the final stage. And he came to me and said, it's not going to happen. I'm like, what do you mean? Everything has been agreed. The fee's been agreed. You know what I want from Lecce, as far as the money is concerned. What seems to be the problem? He says, no, the head coach wants something on the side.
A bung.
Yeah. And I'm like, but surely most of the money is going to the club. You can get it from the club. No, it's nothing to do with the club. He said, in order for you to go, you've got to give him something on the side, and then he'll make the deal happen.
How much was he looking for?
He was looking at 500,000 Swiss francs.
Whoosh.
And at the time, obviously, it was quite a bit of money. And I said, but that's not the way I deal. Like I said before, as a player and as a coach, now even currently, I'm never going to compromise certain values and principles.
Were you tempted at all?
No, not at all. Not at all. Because the problem is the minute you do it once, it's going to be a second, it's going to be a third time, it's going to continue following you. And I wasn't prepared to compromise that. And I said, well, then I'll stay.
You must have been disappointed, because with respect, Italy versus Switzerland.
I was absolutely gutted, because for me, it was obviously a step up again, playing in the Serie A. And when it didn't happen, I just quickly had to get over that moment, stop sulking and start applying myself. Because if you don't do it at a club where you are at that time, it can even make your life very miserable. Because when you don't perform, fans will get on your back.
Yeah.
And I just had to quickly change my mindset. And within a couple of months, Charlton came, and that even for me was very surprising, because they sent a few people to come out and watch me. And even the way the deal happened.
Do you know, sorry to interrupt, do you know that someone's there? Do they say, play well tonight because someone's watching, or do you learn about it afterwards?
Afterwards.
Yeah.
I only realized afterwards when I actually met the guy with my lawyer. This is the guy from Charlton, came to watch you. So it's something that I think even from being a child, I sort of implemented and stuck in my head that I'm always going to play like somebody's watching.
Yeah.
And even to my own kids, I always say that, because you can be at a training field. You know, most coaches and managers go to the best games and try and find players. But if you're in a training field and you maybe just going past and you see this one boy, like, actually, there's a bit of talent I can work with.
Yeah.
So you've always got to play and train like somebody's watching.
You're always in the shop window.
You're always in the shop window. So you've got to make that person aware of what you're able to do. And that happened with me with FC Zurich.
You went on loan to Charlton first, was it, or trial to Charlton, and then they bought you for, I think, £2 million, which is a hell of a thing. What is it like being on loan or on trial?
Well, that's another funny story, and most Charlton fans do appreciate the story, because
tell us.
Actually a deal was negotiated between Crystal Palace and my club. When Crystal Palace at the time were second division or first division, and Charlton were Premier League, and the clubs agreed. But I said, no, I want to go to the Premier League rather, on loan, improve myself, instead of having a 3-year contract offered by Crystal Palace. And you know, with Crystal Palace and Charlton, they do not like each other. So for me, when I keep telling that story, all the Charlton fans love that. You know, they put the egg in your face as Palace fans. So yeah, that was the funny thing. I actually chose to go on loan for 6 months. And it was just an unbelievable 6 months. When you go to the new club, within 7 days, you're on the bench at Anfield playing against Liverpool. Unfortunately, I came on when we were losing 3-0, so that didn't turn out too well. But my home debut, a week later, I get told you're in the starting 11 against Man United. So, firstly, I asked the coach, are you sure?
Yeah.
I've only been here for less than 2 weeks. My wife wasn't there at the time. She was here in South Africa. I called her and said, you won't believe what happened. I'm in a starting 11 for tomorrow's game against United. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was petrified, to be honest. She was running around here in South Africa trying to get a DSTV and satellite because her father didn't have it at home, trying to watch the game, and never got to get the satellite. But yeah, when the game started, before the game started, she asked me, oh, what are you going to do when you score? I'm like, well, now what? What do you mean score? We're playing United. You know the United that just won the Champions League? I said, yeah, what are you going to do when you score? I said, that's not going to happen. First 10 minutes, I hit the crossbar with a header. I'm like, okay, I can do this. 5 minutes later, I scored the first goal. And if you see a video of that first goal, I promise you, one of my teammates had to tackle me to stop me from running because I was so excited. I was just running. If the gates were open of the stadium, I would have ran out, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then later on, we were 3-1 down. You know, typical Sir Alex took off Beckham, took off Scholes, took off Keane. Like, you know, we've got the game wrapped up. And we end up drawing the game 3-3. I scored 2 goals. And that was obviously for me the start of an outstanding 6 months. Because in the next couple of months, I managed to get the best goal in the league.
I know, the volley.
As a lone player.
Goal of the year, yeah.
Goal of the season as a lone player at Charlton. So I don't think there was...
Talk us through it. Against Leicester, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's no joke because it actually happened on April Fool's Day.
All right.
It happened on the 1st of April.
Talk us through it from your perspective. Go on. I bet you remember it like yesterday.
I do, because the funny thing, besides the goal, is we actually did this training in the week leading up to the game. So when it happened, after the game, the manager came to me and said, you see how it pays off? So the midfielder gets the ball on the halfway line.
Yeah.
As a striker, you either get the ball directly from him or you spin the defender.
Yeah.
I chose to go the other way. I still had a bit of speed again. Chose to spin. And you put in a long ball, 40-meter ball.
Who is that?
That was Graham Stewart.
Yes.
Used to be with Everton.
Yes.
Put a long ball over the top. And again, the first thing just came into my mind. As the ball was coming over my shoulder, left foot, my weaker foot. Well, as a pro, there shouldn't be a weaker foot.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be. But it's the one that I wasn't using that often. As the ball came over my left shoulder, I'm like, I'm just going to hit this. And I hit the ball so sweetly. Even the goalkeeper at the time, he was, grounded. He couldn't move. You just saw the ball move across his body into the far corner. And after that, I'm like, yeah, even the manager's reaction I saw on video, you couldn't believe it. But for me, it was one of those days where, again, sometimes the decisions you make will have a bigger change in your life than what you actually realize.
Did anyone come in for you when you were at Charlton?
There was a few clubs.
Any of the big boys?
Not necessarily big boys, just more probably same competition, I would say. Similar clubs, like Palace again and West Ham and these guys. But for me, it was a great environment, to be honest.
Kerbishley, good manager?
Great manager. And it also helps sometimes, obviously, being away from home, having somebody there that you know. Mark Fish, I think he moved there 2 weeks before me. So we had a great relationship. We were all happy at the club. And I just didn't feel the need to move, to be honest.
And living in London as well must have been exciting.
Well, we didn't really live in London because, it's really expensive to live in London. Yeah. So we lived in Kent.
Right.
Which was also awesome.
It's beautiful, yeah.
The Garden of England, very green. And when you have young kids in a family, you get a little bit more value for your money. You get bigger grounds, bigger house. So that's where we lived. And we made the best of it there for 7 years.
How tough is it in the Premier League? I know it's even moved on and there's probably more foreigners now than there were in your day. But as somebody said to us, I think it was Matthew Booth, that your friends are in the team, but they're also your enemies because you're going for the same places, etc. So there's always that dynamic there, competitive dynamic. How cutthroat is it?
Besides, obviously, having to compete with your own teammates is getting your own game on par where actually you can compete with the best. And, as Charlton, we were always one of the smaller clubs. So currently you can see, Man United going to Huddersfield and losing a game because that is your cup final. You know you're not going to get to FA Cup final. So when you play United, you play Liverpool, you play Arsenal, you play Man City. This is the game you want to perform. And fortunately enough for me, those are the games where I managed to step up quite a few times and get the winning goal at Anfield where we haven't won for 55 years. Going to Man City, scoring a winning goal. Going to Chelsea, scoring the winning goal. So little things like that, obviously as a player, will always put you not in a driving seat, but one step ahead of your teammates as far as selections are concerned. So I was always one of those players that like putting in the extra work. Because, training with your team for 2 hours is not enough. Not when you have to compete with the likes of Thierry Henry, when you have to compete with the likes of Anelka. The coach for him, it didn't matter, to be honest, whether you're competing against Anelka or Henry, you're playing in the Premier League, you should be the same. Whether you're earning £10,000 and he's earning £500,000, it doesn't matter, you're playing on the same field. So you always have to make sure that you're one step ahead of your opponent.
What about the drinking culture? Was that ever a temptation? I mean, I know a lot of people, and we know one famous South African who went to Spurs and started off, and I won't mention the name. But I mean, the temptations there, because there must be, young man, so much money, this adulation, etc. Was it difficult?
There was a lot of temptation, but I think during my generation, to be honest, it was a lot less, I would say, than maybe during the previous ones, the Robson and all these guys, Tony Adams. Yeah. I think it was more prevalent during those days than with us. But
Wenger had a lot to do with changing the culture, didn't he?
Quite a few of the younger coaches that came into the Premier League changed that mindset and mentality as far as after games, going out and drinking is not going to help you to perform the following week. So again, for me, and most players will tell you, I probably went out maybe 4 or 5 times in 7 years with the players. I was always so focused on what I needed to do, because coming from South Africa, as a foreign player being in the Premier League, you get told almost on a daily basis, you've got to be better than the English players. You've got to make sure that you're better, because you're taking one of the jobs of their own. And even when you have a bad game, fans have a funny way of showing that, because they will quickly make up a song during a game when you have 3, 4, 5 bad touches, and they will start singing, "What a waste of money." And then you will look for a hole to crawl into. So it was always one of those things that you always had to be at your best. Didn't matter how difficult the conditions were, you had to play your best.
What's it like when you're released? When you get the call and they say, "We're not going to give you another contract"?
2 emotions, obviously. Firstly is disappointment.
What happened in 2006 was you, is that right?
2006.
Yeah.
And that was a funny thing I actually told my wife the other day, because as a coach now, I've got to do that.
Yeah.
But the way you do it sometimes also can make the player feel a lot at ease.
How did they do it with you?
My management never spoke to me. I got a letter in the post. I got home and my wife said, "Oh, here's a letter from Charlton." And it's just like, "Oh, thank you for your 7 years of service, but we won't be extending your contract." And I'm like, okay, I guess I need to move on. And it was disappointment, obviously.
Were you expecting it?
No, I wasn't. Because I think the 3 years, 2004, 5 and 6, I had pretty good seasons with Charlton. But I think there was also, obviously, backroom decisions that needed to be made. And within a year, even Kirbishley left, because they started, they appointed a technical director, which in English football terms never works, because the manager want to make decisions and he wants to bring in the players. And those guys started making the decisions. They wanted to push for Europe. So within a year, Kirbishley left. Within 2 years, the club got relegated. Within 3 years, got relegated again. So again, some decisions, obviously, in hindsight now, they'll probably think maybe we shouldn't have made that. But disappointment, like I said, not getting renewed. And then obviously on the flip side is having to decide whether to stay in the UK or come back home.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Tell us about the decision.
It was a tough one. But I think we got awarded the World Cup in 2004-5. So when my contract wasn't renewed, I said to my wife, I think it's the perfect time to go back home. See how I can also finish off my career playing, but be part of that 2010 World Cup, the first World Cup in Africa. I can be part of that and make a difference as well. So that's something that I think probably pushed me more to coming back home than staying in the UK. Did
you always plan to coach?
No.
What was your plan, or did you have one?
The plan was to stay in football, to obviously try and impart the knowledge and experiences that I've gathered over the 16, 17 years. But the coaching was never. When I came back, got opportunity to go to Supersport and do some part-time work with Premier League games, working with Gary Bailey and Terry Payne, some obviously great names in football. And then I was quite comfortable doing that. Playing golf, a lot of pro-ams.
Yes, I've seen you, yes.
You managed to do, obviously, when you get post-playing. And then I just got a call from one of my former coaches, Mushin Ertugal at Golden Arrows. He said, "Listen, stop talking now on football, stop talking on TV and come start doing it on the field." I'm like, "But I've got no experience." He said, "No, you'll pick up experience as you go along." So when I went there, I started also doing my coaching badges in the UK. So it was quite a bit of commuting.
How tough is that? The coaching
very
badges.
Tough.
Yeah,
very
I heard
tough.
That.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
Cost me close to 400,000 Rand, I think, going up and down. And currently I have my A license, which is the second highest one. The pro license is the one you need to coach in the Premier League. So I can be a coach in the Premier League, but I've got the A license. And since the Golden Arrows days, just been getting better.
Was there ever a stage, Shaun, where you thought, "I'm in trouble, I don't know what to do next"? Did you? I mean, your career has been so incredible, and just going through it has been. I've got goosebumps. But was there ever a stage where you said, "I haven't put enough away. I haven't been sensible enough. I haven't planned. Was there ever a stage where you said, I don't know what I'm doing"?
Again, I must be so blessed because I was very fortunate to have people around me to give me the proper advice and then obviously making the right decisions. From when I left South Africa, going to the US, started investing, starting putting money away. Go to Switzerland, the same story. Investment and putting money away was always a priority. Even buying properties in South Africa.
Yeah.
You know, all these little things to set myself up for post-playing. But the biggest, I think, challenge was when I stopped playing. Because I was working TV at SuperSport part-time. But I was never really sure as to what I was going to do. Well, you know, television is not something you can do permanently. So for me, I always had to think about this, and the transition wasn't that easy.
Well, how do you find something that is as exciting as playing professional football?
Well, that's where it comes down to. If I think about it now, and that's why a lot of the players in the UK do their coaching badges while they're playing. When they're done, they can go straight into management. You look at Steven Gerrard now.
No, Rangers, yeah.
Straight into management because they do things and set themselves up for post-playing. And even that's what I'm trying to do with my own players. And not many of the current generation actually start thinking about it. I always say to them, you always got to play the game today like it's your last game.
Because it might be.
Because it might be. And we've seen it now in the last couple of years, unfortunately, in South Africa. How many players have been taken away by car accidents and all these things? Guys score a winning goal against Orlando Pirates. Come Monday, he passed on in a car accident.
Do the players listen?
Unfortunately, they don't.
Yeah.
Again.
Your son, Tariq, has done amazingly. And you've got another son who's now looking at a professional football career. Would you have or did you advise them not to go that route? Or did you say go with your dreams?
Let's go with your dreams, to be honest. I've always said to my boys, whatever you want to do in life, as parents, you want to support them. When Tariq chose to go, Tariq is, I think, maybe slightly different because from the age of 2, he always had a football at his feet. I don't know why. Maybe because the father was playing, but he always had a football at his feet and he was unbelievable. And as a 4 or 5-year-old, people ask him, what are you going to do for work? He says, I'm going to play football like my daddy. He says, no, but what are you going to do for work? He says, no, I'm going to play football. Be
serious, son. Yeah.
So for him, it was always just about football. And he's always been a focused individual. And when he got the opportunity to go to Newcastle and obviously contract agreed and everything, I knew exactly this was his destiny. This was his passion and what he was destined to do.
How good is he?
He's very good. I honestly believe he will be better than me.
Yeah.
When he keeps obviously continue working and focusing on what he has to do, I think he can be better than me. It's one of those things also where it's like, it's a dangerous thing for any child to go in the same industry as a parent.
Yeah.
Because he's always going to be compared, to the father and what he did. The good thing about what's currently happening at this moment in time, I'm just known as Tariq's dad, which is great. Not former Bafana player. I'm known as Tariq's dad. And I'll take that any day because I think he deserves all the accolades and all the praise he needs.
All right. Well, that's fantastic to hear. But for us, you will always be the one and only Shaun Bartlett. Shaun, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Wasn't that fascinating talking to Shaun Bartlett? What a journey and so many lessons. Thanks as usual to Slow in the City for hosting us. And by the way, their new restaurant is now open. It's called The Course. Follow us on social media at TSE Advisory and subscribe on iTunes for updates. See you next time. Cheers from John Robbie.